The only thing I disagree with is when she said that he hadn't been vetted. No, he had been vetted. All of the things that have been stated, it was all out in the public. And people like Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Tim Walz, the Bulwark, Pod Save America, all these people came together to overlook it all, to explain it all, to rationalize it all. He was vetted. I agree with Alyssa's question. What changed? Why are you bailing on Graham Platner now?
All right, guys. Well, we're finally back from D.C. Had a great time, but we have plenty to catch up on. And let's, of course, start with the political implosion of Maine Senate Democrat candidate Graham Platner, as if that had not already happened before. But it is now the case, curiously, that the Democrat establishment and their connected institutions are finally withdrawing their support from Platner after reluctantly being forced to endorse the guy. And this is all stemming over a Politico piece that released yesterday that alleges some pretty credible allegations of sexual assault and rape stemming back to 2021. And it's getting so bad that basically you have the Maine Democrat Party, you have the establishment characters, but even people like Bernie Sanders now urging that Graham Platner should drop out of the race. And yes, you could say for them, this Senate race is currently in crisis mode, although at the same time, as a paying attention kind of individual, you also cannot mistake the fact this is clearly so that they can do some type of Kamala Harris switcheroo. I am by no means saying that the allegations are not potentially credible. I certainly don't think it's much of a surprise that a guy who's as unhinged and insane as Graham Platner, who lied about previously not having any baggage left to share, had a lot more baggage. But at the same time, you look at the timing of this, you look at the fact that while the primary has happened, it's not really general election season, and potentially Democrats are viewing, hey, we might have time to still try to switch out our candidate, that this is almost a controlled sabotage. And you know, sure, sexual assault, rape allegations, they do matter, but we've seen so many times where Democrats will also cover for their own when it's convenient. So why is Platner now being thrown under the bus? I think there's a conversation that needs to be had about it. So yes, on one hand, the Democrat Party is in a complete mess. You could say for this Senate race, it is very similar to Biden after that first debate. At the same time, you know these dirty dogs have a trick up their sleeve, which we'll explain as well. But let's get into it and let's discuss the guy that Democrats told us was perfectly fine. You shouldn't question his character. He's our nominee. We endorse him. He's talking about the issues that matter. And by the way, he's a reformed and changed man, right? That's what they told us, which is why he keeps lying about everything, because he's so reformed, right? Anyways, let's get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, this whole story begins yesterday where a Politico piece basically alleges that a woman is claiming she was raped by Platner back in 2021. Again, we already got allegations like this. I said weeks ago that I guarantee you, as general election season gets closer, as the opposition research gets stronger, something like this will come out. But curiously, it came out in the middle of July. So Platner allegedly entered this woman's home uninvited one night in 2021. So in other words, just broke into her house, deeply intoxicated, and forced himself on her while she repeatedly told him to stop. And part of the reason why they claim this to be a credible allegation is because of the fact that there are logs with the therapist and stuff where she's talking a lot about this experience. Apparently, this was an ex-girlfriend of Platner on and off for a few years, but blocked contact after telling him the encounter was completely non-consensual. And you can see Politico reviewed documents, including emails between the victim and her therapist and messages between the victim and an acquaintance who she had warned against getting involved with Platner several years before he decided to run for U.S. Senate. And now take a listen, of course, to the reaction of the Democrat Party as a result.
As you're talking to your sources, what are they telling you right now? Yeah, Aaron, we actually have some significant news that was just released by the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. This is a joint statement between the chairwoman of that committee, Kirsten Gillibrand, and the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer. Here's what they wrote, quote, "The allegations reported today are incredibly disturbing. Violence, abuse, and sexual assault are absolutely unacceptable. Graham Platner needs to immediately withdraw as the Democratic nominee for Senate and allow Maine Democrats the opportunity to choose a new candidate who can defeat Susan Collins. The DSCC will not invest in the Maine Senate race if Platner remains on the ballot." So a very, very serious threat there from the DSCC, saying that if Platner does not get out of the way, they are not going to help fund this campaign. And obviously that is extremely significant given what you just pointed out. Democrats need to win this seat.
So you can clearly see that the knives are coming out. That's certainly a big deal that Chuck Schumer now withdrawing his endorsement and even going so far as pushing for Graham Platner to drop out and sort of almost using this blackmail tactic of, hey, not only you're probably not going to win now, but we're not going to support you. You're going to basically be a broke campaign running on no money or no resources if you choose to stay in this thing. Although at the same time, there are many questions that need to be asked here, because you mean to tell me that, first of all, you know, the Nazi tattoo stuff, the communist stuff, the prior allegations of sexual assault, that was all fine according to the Democrats, but suddenly now this one, which at the end of the day is still an allegation, never went to court or anything like that. Sure, it's a therapist thing. You know, she was talking to her friends about it and that stuff. But why is this now suddenly the straw that breaks the camel's back? And then, by the way, you mean to tell me that with all of the vetting and internal opposition research done going into this, Democrats had no foreknowledge of this? Suddenly now they're finding out, what? He has an allegation of sexual assault? You're telling me that for the first time? I'm not sure that I entirely believe that. It's almost as if I, first of all, do believe Democrats are the one who released this piece in Politico and released this information, but did they maybe have an inclination that the Republicans were going to find this around general election season and said, hey, you know, now's the time to basically get him out of the race, Kamala style? As a matter of fact, if you recall, July, around the same exact time that they switched the candidate in 2024, we'll visit that in a second, but I do feel like there's two layers to this. Okay, Graham Platner's a piece of crap, but we knew that before. Why are Democrats now turning the knives and not before the primary? Like, there's a lot of questions that need to be investigated there. But first, here is also what the Maine Democrat Party released in an official statement, saying Maine Democrat Party leadership takes seriously our responsibility to hold every candidate who seeks to represent our state to the highest standard. Over the past several weeks, multiple women have made serious, credible allegations against Graham Platner. Today's statements take those allegations even further. Well, maybe you should have said something before the primary, wouldn't you think so? Oh, wait a minute, they were basically too scared of pissing off any progressives before the primary, but again, now they're like, oh shoot, maybe this is really bad, maybe he'll lose the general election. Turn the knives out, right? Although many of the progressives are not happy about this, and we'll react to some of that in a second. But Maine Democrat Party leadership, in a very coordinated sense, right? The whole DNC basically got together and said they are calling on Graham Platner to withdraw as the Democrat nominee for U.S. Senate. It goes on, though. Here's how shameless this is. The Maine Democrat Party leadership stands with women and survivors, and that principle does not bend on party affiliation. Well, it did before the primary, right? Remember that whole thing? What's up with that? It did for Joe Biden. You know, he had allegations. Guess what? Democrats basically swept that under the rug, nominated him back in 2020 anyway. But in some certain cases, like Eric Swalwell, like Andrew Cuomo, when they wanted to take him out after crowning him to be the party darling, but probably he didn't cooperate on one thing and they said, okay, we're going to throw sexual assault at you. And the same thing here. No, clearly it does bend based on party affiliation, and it always bends in conveniently, it would appear, very self-serving manner. But nonetheless, we respect the woman who had the hard decision to come out. Speaking up is often costly. And even for this Politico piece, it's like, okay, I'm not here to say whether the allegations are definitively true or untrue. Why are they now coming out after the primary, but before the general election, right? Why didn't they come out at, say, the beginning of the election cycle? You know, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But just yesterday, Graham Platner, it turns out, canceled a campaign event for unclear reasons. And this, of course, is coming as polls are being tested with other candidates against Collins, while rumors continue to circulate about a possible new scandal with Platner, even beyond potentially the Politico piece. And what I find very interesting is a lot of the leftists, a lot of the hardcore socialist supporters of Platner, they're saying what you would expect. Hey, this is a political hit piece. This is an attempt by the establishment to get him out of the race because they don't like him or something. But even today, Bernie Sanders, of all people, not sure why, not sure if they have something on him as well or whatever it is, but his top supporter, the guy who was standing by him the entire time, defending him, saying he was going to support Platner no matter what, suddenly has done a complete about face, saying, I've spoken with Graham Platner about the best path forward for Maine in light of these very serious allegations. I've recommended that he step aside. So even Bernie all of a sudden changing his tune, and Graham Platner yesterday released this video basically saying, first of all, that the allegations are untrue, but then saying, well, we're going to decide what the best path forward is for our campaign, which I remember when Eric Swalwell did the exact same thing. So I think we know where this is going.
I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false. Over the last 10 months, I have been deeply humbled by the faith Mainers have put in me. We were united in a love of Maine, a belief that our politics must change, and a focus on defeating Susan Collins. So, regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict, we are taking the time to reflect on the best path forward for the state that I love, the people that I love.
I mean, really? The political realities of all of your prior scandals were not a problem. You said you're going to stand there and fight. And by the way, it's what? An establishment hit job. They're just going after me because I'm an anti-Democrat leadership, progressive socialist kind of guy. But now suddenly these political realities, they're not serious though, right? They're not credible allegations. They're fake. It's false. It's not true. But also, I might have to leave the race, which it sounds like he's saying, right? He's clearly kind of indicating I'm very likely here to drop out. Yeah, the whole thing is a little bit fishy. Now, undeniably, it definitely does throw the Maine Democrat Party into a crisis, especially if I certainly hope Graham Platner stays defiant and stays in the race. Obviously, he'd be easy to beat. He has a lot of problems. But hey, Graham, stand there and fight, dude. You know, keep your integrity. If you don't have that, but you know what I mean, right? Stay in. They're trying to just sabotage you because you're a threat to the system, quote unquote. Totally, right? Where are your guts, dude? You overcame all these past scandals. You prevailed over the Nazi tattoo. You prevailed over saying you were a communist and all this crazy stuff. And you prevailed even over prior sexual assault scandals. But now suddenly, oh, here comes the DNC blackmailing you and Mr. Outsider, Mr. Anti-Establishment. Okay, I'm going to drop out of the race now. Pathetic on both sides, I will say, like, genuinely. But anyways, as you could expect, a lot of like progressive figures within media, the pundit class, like Cenk Uygur, for example, out of the Young Turks, Kyle Kulinski, others, they're all fuming at the DNC over this. They're saying, congratulations to national media on politically assassinating Graham Platner. If he drops out and the Democrat Party tries to give us two candidates who are both for Israel and corporate PACs, they'll face a revolt like they've never seen. Days of BS false choices are over. Well, we certainly have to hope that's true to all of the Platner supporters who thought they were supporting a revolutionary, right? If the establishment just substitutes someone in who's safe on their side and not on your side, certainly you guys should be upset about that. You should sit there and say, I'm not getting behind that, right? We know what they did to us. But at the same time, even as it pertains to Cenk, I'm going to take a wild guess that's not going to happen. And every single time, as they always do, as they did with Bernie in both primaries and many other characters, they're eventually going to come around and say, well, Susan Collins is too important to beat, so I don't like it, but we're going to vote for the Democrats every single time. They lay down like dogs. So I don't expect anything different to happen here, but there's their little 15 minutes of outrage, right? Where they're going to pretend to be upset over this. So you have that. Now, interestingly, I wonder how these people feel about Bernie Sanders flipping sides, but I mean, we can just hope. Let's all hope that this situation, however it ends, causes maximum infighting and turmoil within the Democrat Party. And what's even more hilarious is that while shopping for their brand new candidate, it looks like Democrats are unable to find someone normal. As a matter of fact, it looks like this guy, Troy Jackson is the character rumored to replace Graham Platner. And the progressives, some of whom are angry and trying to get their candidate in there, are already launching attacks of their own. Apparently, Progressive Victory, who given by the name, right? This is like far left supporters of Graham Platner, are trying to now say there are also sexual assault allegations against Troy Jackson. As you can see here, Progressive Victory says they've received troubling information about Troy Jackson related to his behavior towards women. They allege we've been asking our contacts on the ground in Maine about Troy Jackson earlier today after seeing many suggestions he should replace Platner against Collins. In our discussions, we have received troubling information about not only Jackson's behavior, but the behavior of many prominent Maine Democrats toward women more broadly. And so basically what they're saying here is, hey, you're trying to use this against Platner, but look at your people. But here's the thing, perhaps Progressive Victory does not understand. It's not actually about moral character or sexual assault. These are only things that Democrats virtue signal about. Because Troy Jackson, I guess you could say, is more within the establishment clique likely of the Democrat Party, because he's the person who will be at least a little more cooperative with Chuck Schumer and won't be another Mamdani style character trying to, come for the leadership of the DNC and basically threaten the Democrat leadership who spawned all these crazy lunatics and now they're trying to overthrow him. That's what it's really about. And so whether this is true, I can virtually guarantee you're never going to hear the first thing about sexual assault from Maine Democrats. And even if it comes out in the media, do you seriously believe Democrats, if they switch the candidate again, are going to do the same thing? They're going to be morally consistent as the Maine Democrat Party claimed, regardless of affiliation, we believe the survivors. No, they're absolutely not. So we know what is going on here. Here is my hope, though. And absolutely, Republicans should get involved in this. I don't know the exact legal circumstances, but what I will say is, folks, the Democrat primary has already happened in Maine. If you remember, they've already nominated Graham Platner. So I would have to assume the legality of them switching out the candidate after the fact may be questionable. Then again, it was questionable in 2024. Republicans did try to sue over it, but guess what? Laws and rules don't apply to Democrats. But that is certainly something we should push as well, right? Definitely at least litigate as much as possible. Is it actually allowed for Democrats to switch out their guy after the primary, especially given we're not talking about any kind of exceptional circumstance here, right? It's not like the guy, let's say, got cancer or passed away or something. It's literally just, not even the voters. The voters did not decide this, right? The voters actually voted for Graham Platner quite hilariously. Party of Democracy, by the way. But no, the Party of Democracy basically steps in, much like they did in 2024, and says, hey, we think the voters chose the wrong candidate. We think this guy can't win. And so because we feel like it and we don't like him, we're going to override quote unquote democracy and substitute a guy of our choosing in. Like, is that actually something that legally should be allowed? I don't think so, but all of that in mind, we'll see what happens. But this is where it currently stands at the moment. It is looking like Platner is going to be forced out of the race. Again, we can only sit here and hope the Democrat baton passing, the transition of power there, does not go all that smoothly. And hey, hopefully the progressive Platner supporters are serious in what they're saying, that they're going to boycott. I doubt that to be the case, but that's why I know we haven't really made a definitive conclusion on this, but why I genuinely have kind of mixed feelings on the situation. Because on one hand, Platner's a piece of crap, and we've been going after him quite a bit, and he deserves everything that's happening to him. However, at the same time, Democrat voters selected this person, okay? Democrat Party establishment leadership, even before this, because they didn't want to piss off their voters, they were too cowardly, like Chuck Schumer, threw their endorsement behind this person. you should stand by that and be accountable for that, right? You don't get to just say, oh, well, the primary happened, but hey, let's just do a substitution. And they're always doing this strategy, right? The party of democracy, but let's undemocratic. Like, you shouldn't be able to get away with that. And I hope they don't. I hope Graham Platner, honestly, has a last minute change of heart and he does the Jordan Belfort speech and says, I'm not freaking leaving, right? That's what needs to happen, but I seriously doubt that because, as we see time and time again, the so-called anti-establishment progressives don't have much of a spine at the end of the day, and you know how this stuff goes. But certainly it was very smart, for example, of Susan Collins' campaign. Have you noticed they haven't really gone that much after Platner? They've been kind of holding back their money. Why is that? Because they sort of forecasted that this candidate switch thing might have been inevitable, which I think is a sign of political experience. They were very wise about that. They watched what happened in 2024. They knew exactly what they're doing. So hopefully Republicans are staying one step ahead of this. Hopefully we're already running the opposition research on his potential challengers. But hey, there you go. Just another day in the Democrat Party, the party of virtue, of morality. They virtue signal about this stuff all the time. Remember, I mean, this is sort of a dead talking point, but remember back in the first Trump presidency, they always said, yeah, well, look, we can't have Trump because of his moral character, And we're the party of decency. We're the party of morality. It's like, okay, whatever you say. Proud to be someone who never even bought into that crap, that nonsense to begin with, right? But, anyways, there you essentially have it. That said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.